I still remember the day when word spread that the victorious General Marcus had brought back a remarkably beautiful young woman. Standing before the throne in the Great Hall, His Majesty asked what reward he desired for his triumph. Marcus spoke without hesitation. He wished to break his engagement with me and marry that woman instead. The Emperor's face lit up with unmistakable delight. In one swift motion, he issued 3 imperial decrees, one to dissolve my betrothal, another to sanction Marcus's new union, and a third commanding my immediate entry into the palace. On the day I entered the imperial court, I removed the veil I had worn for years. With perfect composure, I watched the gasps of astonishment ripple through the assembled crowd and observed the stunned expression that crossed General Marcus's face. Yet it was His Majesty who stepped forward with obvious satisfaction, brushing aside the eunuch at my side to draw me close in a gesture of unmistakable pride. "Come now," he announced to all present. "Pay your respects to the imperial consort." When I was but a child, I once wandered uninvited into my father's study, where I discovered a young boy perched upon father's precious writing desk. The impudent child had ground fresh ink and was gleefully smearing it across a painting father had just completed. My indignation flared instantly. How dare this stranger deface father's work? I seized the boy's hand, fully intending to drag him before my father to answer for his mischief. In his struggles to break free, the boy knocked over a candle stand, and by cruel chance, an inkstone tumbled down, striking him squarely on the head and rendering him unconscious. The overturned candle set the room ablaze, and suddenly we both faced mortal peril. With strength I didn't know I possessed, I dragged the boy's lifeless form from the burning chamber, pulling him to safety like a sack of grain. What greeted me outside was my mother's worried gaze and my father's face, pale as winter frost. Father, who had never shown anger toward me in all my years, gathered the unconscious boy in his arms without a word and hurried away, not even sparing me a glance. I, who had always been the apple of father's eye, burst into heartbroken sobs. Clutching at mother's sleeve, I demanded to know if this boy was father's secret son by another woman. For my presumption, mother rewarded me with a sharp rap to the back of my head. The ink had splattered across my face during our scuffle, and my tears only made the mess worse, streaking black marks across my cheeks like charcoal smudges. When I caught sight of myself in the mirror, I wailed that I had been permanently disfigured. Soon enough, word spread throughout our household that the right side of my face bore a large black stain. As gossip has a way of growing in the telling, by the time the story reached the capital's streets, everyone believed that Chancellor Richard's only daughter had indeed been hideously scarred. But it was merely ink. I scrubbed and scrubbed at my face until my skin turned red, yet the stain remained stubbornly in place. Father was prepared to discipline me most severely for the destruction of his study, but mother intervened. Exasperated by my continued wailing, she finally instructed the servants to abandon their cleansing efforts. "Let her wear a veil when she ventures out," mother declared with resignation. "The ink will fade in a few months at most." The following day, I stepped out wearing my veil to purchase hair ornaments, and this only served to confirm the rumors of my disfigurement in the public mind. I attempted to explain the truth, but my words fell on deaf ears. Even the crown princess, who typically competed with me for the finest jewelry, now regarded me with such pity that she graciously allowed me first choice of hairpins without contest. The fault lay not with my vanity, but with father's exceedingly high-quality ink. That wretched veil adorned my face for an entire month. As if the fates conspired against me, subsequent misfortunes befell my appearance with alarming regularity. I disturbed a hornet's nest and suffered multiple stings to my face, developed an allergic reaction to almonds that covered my cheeks in unsightly bumps, and lost a front tooth while playing hide-and-seek with the neighborhood children. Mother began to suspect some mental deficiency on my part. Why, she lamented, must I always injure my face above all else? And so the veil became my permanent companion. Father would sigh deeply and remind me that for a young lady, one's countenance was of paramount importance. How had he raised such a tomboyish daughter who showed so little care for her appearance? I never encountered that mysterious boy again, and in time, I pushed the incident from my mind entirely. The turning point came in my 15th year when our newly crowned emperor, and I suspect him of suffering from excessive leisure, issued an imperial decree arranging my marriage. The old saying warns that scholars and warriors should not intermarry, and given Father's position as chancellor, one would expect His Majesty to exercise greater caution. Yet for reasons beyond my comprehension, he betrothed me to our most celebrated general. Perhaps the emperor trusted both Father and the general implicitly, or perhaps he simply feared no threat of rebellion. Imperial edicts brook no opposition, though I heard tell that General Marcus petitioned His Majesty repeatedly to rescind the marriage decree, all to no avail. I accepted my fate with resignation. One husband seemed much like another to me. Naturally, I made inquiries about my intended spouse. My requirements were modest. I merely hoped he wouldn't prove to be some decrepit gentleman of 40-odd years. Fortune smiled upon me. The general, one Marcus Windsor, had joined his father's campaigns at the tender age of 13, and now, at 17, had distinguished himself through innovative battlefield tactics and numerous victories. Having inherited his father's martial prowess, His Majesty had honored him with the title of Supreme Military Commander. Relief washed over me. At least he wasn't ancient. However, a disturbing rumor reached my ears. Marcus was said to be exceedingly particular about feminine beauty. Determined to secure a tolerable marriage, I resolved to reveal my true appearance to the general. An opportunity presented itself when I learned that Marcus would attend a banquet hosted by His Majesty in 3 days' time. I gazed at my reflection, resplendent in elaborate finery, and couldn't help but think I resembled a peacock in full display. My maid Lily, however, stared at me with undisguised admiration. "Lily," I chided gently, "do wipe that drool from your chin." She touched the corner of her mouth self-consciously. "Miss," she breathed, "you're absolutely radiant. What a shame that no one knows of your beauty. People claim that Minister Harrison's daughter is the capital's greatest beauty, but she couldn't match even a 10,000th of your splendor." I rolled my eyes at her flattery. "Enough of your honeyed words. This is called playing the pig to catch the tiger, understand? When the moment is right, I'll astonish everyone with my true appearance." With great ceremony, I donned my veil and prepared for the evening's festivities. My plan was elegantly simple. I would arrange for Marcus to glimpse my face accidentally, whereupon he would fall madly in love with me. Once we married, I could live exactly as I pleased, secure in his devotion. How naive I proved to be. The banquet commenced, though our newly crowned emperor arrived fashionably late, draped in white fox fur and moving with deliberate leisure to his elevated seat. "Rise," he commanded with casual authority. "Forgive the delay, beloved ministers." Observing his youthful, spirited features, one could hardly believe he shared my age of 15 years. His Majesty's gaze swept the assembly before settling at his place to enjoy wine and delicacies. Meanwhile, my own meal grew cold as I silently cursed his tardiness. Such concerns paled beside my true objective. I quickly spotted Marcus in his dark official robes, cutting a striking figure across the hall. Indeed, he was quite handsome. I fixed my attention upon him for what seemed an eternity, until my eyes watered from the strain. Yet he never once glanced in my direction. I clenched my fists in determination. "Just wait," I thought. "I'll captivate you before this night ends." Alas, after enduring the cold feast and tedious entertainment, I finally saw Marcus rise from the banquet and make his way to the rear gardens. I followed stealthily, only to lose sight of him completely and find myself thoroughly lost in the maze of pathways. Yes, you heard correctly. I, a grown woman, became lost in familiar palace grounds. As I wandered in growing anxiety, the temperature plummeted and fierce winds began to blow. Achoo! I sneezed violently. Suddenly, a particularly vicious gust tore the veil from my face and filled my eyes with debris, leaving me temporarily blinded. At that moment, warm hands touched my shoulder. I leaped backward in alarm. Who goes there? My eyes streamed tears, making vision impossible. Miss need not fear, came a smooth voice. It is merely this humble servant. My panic subsided as I recognized the speaker, the Grand Eunuch, chief among His Majesty's personal attendants. He was known to be kind-hearted, and his partner maintained connections with our household. Your Excellence, I said, performing what I hoped was an appropriate bow, I am Chancellor Richard's daughter. I was admiring the garden when sudden winds struck, filling my eyes with dust and disorienting me completely. Might you help me retrieve my veil and escort me back to the banquet? Otherwise, Father will worry. Silence greeted my request. Your Excellence? I felt gentle hands replace my veil and drape a warm fur cloak about my shoulders. Miss Richard, the voice returned, please take my arm so I might guide you back to the festivities. Relief flooded through me. I'm most grateful for your kindness. As we walked, the sounds of revelry grew louder. My maid Lily spotted us from a distance and hurried over. Your Excellence, she said with a deep bow, I am Miss Richard's servant. What has befallen my mistress? Lily helped me stand steady as the Grand Eunuch explained, Your mistress was caught in the garden winds and suffered irritation to her eyes. She should cleanse them immediately. I've prepared warm water in the side pavilion, along with medicinal tea to prevent illness from the cold. Grasping Lily's hand, I felt my tense nerves finally relax. Thank you for your consideration, Your Excellence. After washing my eyes and choking down medicine so bitter it contorted my face beyond recognition, I changed my garments and returned to the banquet hall. There sat Marcus, drinking wine and sporting flushed cheeks from the alcohol. How infuriating! He had bolted away like a startled rabbit, leaving me in such a predicament. In my foolish desire to captivate Marcus, I had worn a gown of gossamer thin fabric that left me nearly frozen. My evening had been a complete disaster. Suddenly, I felt the weight of an intense gaze upon me. Looking up, I found His Majesty watching me with unmistakable amusement. A chill ran down my spine. Why was he staring at me so? Only then did I notice that his white fox fur had vanished. Terror gripped me as understanding dawned. Surely not. Could it have been? In the garden. The Grand Eunuch must have stolen His Majesty's cloak, I reasoned frantically. When he saw me in the garden, he feared I had witnessed his theft and sought to implicate me. Thank heavens I had left the cloak in the side pavilion. I met the Emperor's gaze with what I hoped was confidence, but his expression grew even more meaningful as he beckoned the Grand Eunuch and whispered something in his ear. A sense of impending doom settled over me. From his elevated throne, His Majesty's voice rang out lazily across the hall. Chancellor Richard! The great hall fell silent, as a tomb. My father rose on trembling legs, made his way to the center of the floor, and knelt with visible effort. Your Majesty, he managed. The Emperor said nothing, merely gazing down at Father while the entire assembly held its breath. I could see Father's political rivals, the Minister of Personnel and Deputy Minister Harrison, exchanging knowing glances. Father's brow beaded with perspiration as I felt my own pulse racing, wondering what this mad emperor intended. When the atmosphere had grown nearly suffocating, His Majesty chuckled softly, resting his chin on his hand. This evening, we encountered a long-lost friend who also happens to be our savior. Chancellor Richard, how do you think we should reward such a person? Confusion washed over me. I glanced at Father, who seemed to grasp some meaning that escaped the rest of us. Throughout the hall, ministers and their families exchanged puzzled looks, all wondering who this mysterious savior might be. Father prostrated himself completely, his forehead striking the floor repeatedly. "Your Majesty, this humble servant cannot presume to advise you." His Majesty's response came without warning. "Chancellor Richard, why such anxiety? We never said you were our savior. However, since this person is rather modest, we shall bestow upon her the finest treasures recently presented by the Kingdom of Lutia. Might we trouble you to deliver these gifts on our behalf?" After pronouncing himself weary, the Emperor departed the hall, leaving Father kneeling motionless in the center of the floor. In his absence, whispers filled the chamber as curious and malicious gazes fixed upon our family, as if Father had somehow offended His Majesty. Then the Grand Eunuch gestured with his silk handkerchief, and the great doors swung open. A procession of young eunuchs entered, bearing chest after chest overflowing with gold, silver, and precious jewels. The parade continued for what felt like hours until the hall blazed with reflected light that nearly blinded all present. I sat in stunned disbelief. Had this mad emperor truly lost his mind? Did he have money to burn? The Grand Eunuch approached to help Father rise, whispering something that made Father's expression grow complex before he nodded reluctantly. Now every eye in the hall regarded us with burning curiosity, as ministers whispered among themselves, desperate to identify His Majesty's mysterious savior. I suspected these courtiers change their expressions more frequently than actors change masks. Word of Father returning home with 5 carriages laden with treasure spread throughout the capital within hours. Minister Harrison's daughter, Victoria, who had always mocked my supposed ugliness, launched into a vicious tirade against me during the banquet. I merely cleaned my ears as if listening to a dog bark, which sent her into fits of rage. Soon the entire capital buzzed with rumors that Father knew His Majesty's savior, and countless people sought audiences at our estate, nearly wearing down our doorstep. Upon returning home, however, Father claimed illness and refused all visitors for several days. When he finally recovered, he rushed to the palace at dawn and didn't return until evening. Mother's inquiries met with silence, though Father's worried expression deepened daily. I hadn't seen him so troubled in years. His sighs grew more frequent, and whenever he looked at me, his distress seemed to intensify. The following day brought news that barbarian tribes from the northwest had grown increasingly aggressive. His Majesty immediately appointed Marcus to lead the campaign, meaning he would depart for the frontier shortly. Our wedding, originally scheduled for the following month, was indefinitely postponed. After much consideration, I visited the temple to pray for a protective amulet, intending to present it to Marcus personally. I learned he would be at the training grounds and hurried there immediately. Upon arrival, I observed him conversing with a woman of remarkable bearing and martial grace. At the entrance, guards blocked my path. "No unauthorized persons permitted." Lily bristled with indignation. "Unauthorized? Open your eyes! This is the Chancellor's daughter, your general's betrothed." The soldier's expression turned contemptuous. "Ah, so you're the pampered miss who destroyed the general's happiness with his military advisor. Delicate as a flower that wilts in the breeze, best you avoid this place of sharp weapons, lest we common soldiers accidentally harm precious nobility and lose our heads to the Chancellor's wrath." "How dare you?" Lily sputtered. I restrained my maid with a gentle smile. "Very well, we shall wait here for General Marcus." Our argument had grown rather loud, drawing Marcus's attention. He frowned before speaking quietly to his companion, then approached with the woman at his side. "Private Thompson, stand down, show proper respect," the woman commanded sharply. The soldier retreated, though not without shooting us a final, contemptuous glare. Lily trembled with fury while I calmed her with a subtle gesture. "And you are?" I inquired of the woman. Before Marcus could speak, she stepped forward with a formal salute. "Miss Richard, I am the General's military advisor, Arabella would. She then favored Marcus with a radiant smile. Marcus, I see Miss Richard wishes to speak privately with you. I'll return to my tent. Marcus raised his hand to stop her. Belle, there's no need for you to leave. Miss Richard can speak freely here. I smiled awkwardly, recognizing the obvious affection between them, despite the imperial marriage decree that neither could openly defy. I crushed any lingering expectations in my heart, feeling the protective amulet grow heavy in my sleeve. If I were to marry Marcus under these circumstances, my future would likely prove quite unpleasant. Lily, noting my prolonged silence and strained smile, spoke with pointed sarcasm. Our miss learned of your impending departure for the battlefield and visited the temple to pray for a protective amulet. She never expected to find you with your beloved at your side. How touching her devotion must seem now. Marcus's expression darkened. Mind your tongue! Belle is my military advisor, not some ordinary woman. Arabella maintained perfect composure. Marcus, please don't be upset. I watched their theatrical performance with growing irritation, shooting Lily a reproachful glare. This foolish girl had made matters worse. My maid spoke out of turn, I said smoothly. Please pay her no mind, General Marcus and Advisor Wood. I was merely taking a casual stroll and have no wish to intrude upon your time. We shall take our leave now. As I turned to drag my indignant maid away, Marcus called out, Miss Richard, wait. I paused, watching him extend his hand. Where is the protective amulet? Surprise flickered across my features as I noticed Arabella's stiffening posture. I had initially thought Marcus decent enough, but his behavior now, flirting while his beloved stood nearby, disgusted me. With feigned regret, I replied, My apologies, General Marcus. I seem to have lost the amulet along the way. Perhaps Advisor Wood could obtain one for you instead. Farewell. Without ceremony, I tossed the carefully blessed amulet into a nearby haystack and departed. Some days later, Marcus sent word requesting a meeting. His letter claimed he had only just realized I had misunderstood his relationship with Arabella. They were merely colleagues, he insisted. He wished to apologize in person and invited me to dine with him at the Prosperity Pavilion. I had little interest in seeing him, but perhaps this meeting would allow us to clarify our positions. If he truly loved Arabella, we could agree to live separate lives even after marriage. With this practical mindset, I arrived at the pavilion early, waiting from noon until evening without any sign of him. I had been stood up. I gripped my chopsticks tighter, seething with anger. Just as I prepared to leave, Marcus finally appeared, with Arabella at his side. My hurt transformed instantly into cold fury as I straightened my spine and approached them with dignity. Marcus looked genuinely contrite. Miss Richard, please accept my apologies. Before he could finish, Arabella interrupted with an apologetic smile. Miss Richard, I'm so sorry. Marcus isn't to blame for the delay. I was injured today, and he insisted on summoning a physician for me, which caused this unfortunate lateness. If you're angry, please direct your displeasure toward me. Rage and humiliation warred within me. Even without love between us, Marcus owed me basic respect as his betrothed. My voice turned icy. I'm no shrew to strike or berate you. Marcus, as a general, your word should carry weight. Since you arranged this meeting, keeping me waiting indefinitely and offering only casual apologies shows remarkable arrogance. If you find me objectionable, speak plainly. I'm not some lovesick fool who must have you at any cost. Why humiliate me this way? Marcus's face cycled through various shades, while Arabella spoke with false sadness. The fault is entirely mine, Marcus. I'm so sorry. Marcus gazed at her tenderly. This has nothing to do with Belle. I was wrong, Miss Richard. Direct any anger toward me alone. I'll visit your family estate tomorrow to make proper amends. Disgusted beyond measure, I strode away without looking back, ignoring Marcus's calls. Behind me, I heard Arabella's pained cry and Marcus's hurried footsteps returning to her aid. I climbed into my carriage and departed without a backward glance. The following morning, Marcus appeared at our gates bearing a bundle of birch rods upon his back, creating quite a spectacle for the gathered townspeople. Father welcomed him inside, and since I hadn't yet told Father about the previous evening's humiliation, he assumed I was merely being petulant. Learning that Marcus had brought my favorite candied chestnuts from the West District, Father summoned me to receive the apology. Though I had no desire to see Marcus, those chestnuts proved irresistible. I brought Lily along, determined to witness whatever absurd performance Marcus had planned. In the reception hall, Marcus sat dejectedly, the birch rods having drawn blood across his back. Father signaled me frantically, silently asking what offense Marcus could have committed. I found myself speechless. Marcus awkwardly apologized before slowly producing a wooden hairpin from his sleeve. "General, what is this?" I asked, tilting my head at what resembled a tree branch. Marcus flushed crimson, stammering badly. This is a hairpin I carved last night. To offer as apology to Miss Richard." His pitiful appearance made me laugh, despite my anger, though I couldn't forget his performance with Arabella. "General, won't Advisor Wood be angry if you give me a hairpin? Won't she be jealous? Won't she strike me?" Marcus shook his head vigorously. "Miss Richard, you misunderstand completely. I've never carved anything for Belle. She was orphaned young. I found her among refugees and recognized her strategic talents, promoting her to advisor. After years serving together, I regard her only as a sister." I regarded the hairpin coldly, making no move to accept it. My sharp eyes caught sight of a familiar cord around his neck. Leaning closer, I lifted the string from beneath his collar, my fingertips accidentally brushing his skin. There hung the protective amulet I had discarded. Marcus turned red as a cooked shrimp, unable to form coherent words despite repeated attempts. At that moment, Arabella entered to inform Marcus of his departure time. The relaxed atmosphere evaporated as Marcus's expression grew serious. "I must go. Please, Miss Richard, forgive me and accept this hairpin." Realizing his departure day had arrived, I felt a pang of sympathy. Regardless of his romantic failings, Marcus would risk his life defending our nation, a noble sacrifice deserving respect. Arabella watched the wooden hairpin with obvious distress, which sparked my mischievous nature. With theatrical emotion, I dabbed at non-existent tears. "Since you carved it yourself, I shall treasure this gift. Marcus, return home safely." He nodded solemnly, gazing deeply into my eyes before departing. Arabella followed, but not before shooting me a venomous glare. I silently mouthed, "Is that all?" in response. Winter arrived early that year, blanketing everything in pristine snow. During the 2 months since Marcus's departure, both palace and capital remained remarkably peaceful. Our unpredictable emperor refrained from any dramatic proclamations. I sat by my warming pot, watching the heavy snowfall while my thoughts turned unexpectedly to Marcus. Perhaps suffering from some strange affliction, Marcus regularly sent me small curiosities from the northwest frontier. Having never traveled to that region, I found these trinkets fascinating and often examined them during idle moments. Courtesy demanded I acknowledge his gifts, and since he was technically my betrothed, I penned a brief letter in response. His death would inconvenience me greatly. I had no desire to spend my life as an unwed widow with a commemorative shrine at the capital gates. Several days later, Consort Sue hosted a plum blossom viewing party, inviting various court ladies to admire the winter blooms. I arrived carrying 2 small walnuts that Marcus had sent. Apparently, Northwestern gentlemen enjoyed rotating such objects in their palms. The ladies assembled gradually, awaiting only Consort De's arrival. Consort Su and De maintained a notorious rivalry, so when De appeared fashionably late, Su's remarks dripped with venom. "Sister D, what impressive airs you put on, keeping us all waiting." D glided forward gracefully, adjusting her jeweled hairpins with a coy smile. "His Majesty visited my chambers last evening, leaving me rather exhausted this morning." Su's expression soured instantly. "What sorcery have you employed to so bewitch His Majesty? Your methods are truly remarkable, sister." Day rolled her eyes dismissively. "With so many aging beauties in the harem and no new selections in recent years, naturally His Majesty frequents my quarters." "You—" Su's chest heaved with indignation. "Having enjoyed sufficient entertainment, I lost interest in their poetic competitions and sought quieter surroundings. Wrapped in thick fox fur and clutching a warming brazier, I slipped away during the commotion to find a small pavilion where I could watch the falling snow in peace. As I stretched out my hand to catch snowflakes, inspiration struck. I formed a snowball and, spotting the unsuspecting Lily, struck her squarely. She stumbled in surprise before toppling into a snowdrift. Alarmed, I rushed forward, only to receive a snowball to my own head. Lily stood brushing herself off, grinning wickedly as she prepared another projectile. "Lily, you deceiving wretch!" I called out, hands on my hips. "You'll pay for that trick." We engaged in spirited battle, oblivious to our surroundings. The cold air turned my cheeks rosy, but I felt wonderfully alive. Surely this beat tedious poetry gatherings. I packed an enormous snowball while Lily busied herself with her own ammunition. Catching her off guard, I hurled my missile with all my strength. The snowball struck with a satisfying thud, though not its intended target. Lily had dodged, and my projectile found a figure in brilliant yellow robes. "Insolence!" the Grand Eunuch barked. My snowball had struck His Majesty directly. I immediately dropped to my knees. "Your Majesty, please forgive this servant's transgression." The Emperor glowered darkly. "Such behavior in the palace. What is the meaning of this?" Fear gripped me as Lily kowtowed frantically beside me, accepting full blame for suggesting our snow fight. I watched her forehead turn purple from repeated impacts and felt anger rising within me. His Majesty's sudden appearance had startled us, yet he blamed us for the accident. I lifted my chin defiantly to meet his gaze. Something in my expression seemed to amuse him, for his eyes crinkled as he gestured for me to rise. "While we might overlook your offense, compensation is still required. Since you have soiled our robes, you must replace them." "What?" I stared in bewilderment. "Your servant cannot afford such garments. Perhaps I might pay their value in silver instead." Imperial clothing required specialized tailoring with threads of gold and precious materials. Surely monetary compensation would suffice. The Grand Eunuch scolded harshly. "Presumptuous! How dare you insult His Majesty? Does the Son of Heaven lack for your paltry silver?" As I struggled with this impossible demand, the Emperor's tone shifted unexpectedly. "If you cannot afford robes, then you yourself shall serve as compensation." Horror filled me. "Impossible, Your Majesty! I am plain and disfigured, unlearned and frivolous. I spend my days playing with cats and dogs. Father says only Your Majesty's marriage decree saved me from spinsterhood. Moreover, Your Majesty possesses divine countenance and unmatched valor. I am utterly unworthy." My self-deprecation sent the Emperor into delighted laughter. "Do you truly hold us in such high regard? Enough jesting. Come, walk with us a while." The Grand Eunuch suddenly seized Lily, leading her away. My nerves stretched taut as I wondered about His Majesty's intentions in this broad daylight. Surely even an emperor wouldn't attempt impropriety in public. I clutched my fur cloak more tightly. The Emperor's expression showed a hint of distaste, which only confused me further. "Fear not. he said dismissively. Your servant Felix has taken the girl for medical attention. Follow closely. I trailed behind reluctantly, constantly glancing back toward Lily's retreating form. The Emperor suddenly grasped my arm, causing me to stumble forward and nearly fall flat on my face. As I began to apologize, he pressed a finger to his lips and pulled me behind an ornamental rock formation. Approaching voices made me freeze. You shouldn't have come. Someone might discover us if you act so boldly. I recognized Consort D's voice immediately. I've missed you desperately, came a male response. With the Emperor visiting your chambers nightly, I've had no opportunity to see you. It seems his company has made you forget my devotion. The man addressed himself as this prince. Clearly some audacious royal relation. Learning such scandalous imperial secrets left me trembling like a leaf. His Majesty, perhaps thinking I suffered from cold, drew me within his spacious cloak, leaving only my head visible. I stole glances at the Emperor's impassive expression, feeling unexpected sympathy. At that moment, he seemed more pitiable than I, his dignity thoroughly compromised. Consort D giggled softly. Nonsense. When His Majesty visits, we merely share tea and play chess. For some reason, he never touches me. The pair drew closer to our hiding place, their movements suggesting intimate congress. My body went rigid with embarrassment as I fixed my gaze upon the Emperor's chest, trying to maintain composure while silently praying for this ordeal to end. Time crawled by until my feet grew numb before the lovers finally departed. Relief flooded through me as I looked up to find His Majesty's face mere inches from mine, his expression unreadable. As he leaned closer, I feared we might accidentally kiss and instinctively pushed against his chest. Realizing my audacity, my face drained of color. Instead of anger, the Emperor drew me closer, his voice rough with emotion. Forgive us. That was not intentional. Tears threatened as I considered my impossible position, engaged to one man yet compromised by another who happened to rule the empire. Mother's words echoed in my mind. Truly, no man could be trusted. Snowflakes drifted into my eyes, causing natural tears that sent the Emperor into a panic. Don't weep, he pleaded, frantically attempting to dry my cheeks. We were wrong. Please don't cry. I indulged in theatrical sobbing while voicing my fears. Your Majesty won't punish this servant, will you? Of course not, he assured me. Only then did I realize his ministrations had displaced my veil. Surely now he would recognize my beauty and desire to possess me, I thought with narcissistic confidence. His next words demolished that fantasy entirely. There now, no more tears. Look how you've cried, snot bubbles and all, ugly as the little black dog we encountered in childhood. I nearly choked on my indignation. Here I stood, a great beauty, and he compared me to a mangy cur. Perhaps Consort D's infidelity resulted not from imperial inadequacy, but from the Emperor's own shortcomings. His Majesty's face darkened ominously as he grasped my wrist with bruising strength. We shall demonstrate our adequacy soon enough. In my panic, I accidentally kicked him. The result of this debacle was that during my journey home, I could think of nothing but potential execution and family disgrace. For several nights, I suffered nightmares of my own beheading, utterly forgetting Consort D's adultery. Recent weather disasters kept His Majesty occupied with state affairs, sparing me from further encounters, a blessing that preserved my family's 9 generations. I frequently observed the triumphant Consort D at various court functions, her smugness leaving me perpetually unsettled as though some vital truth remained unspoken. Then spring brought word that Marcus had achieved victory and would return within days. I dedicated myself to embroidering a satchel as a welcoming gift, reasoning that after receiving so many trinkets from him, courtesy demanded reciprocation. Strangely, my single letter had never received a reply. The anticipated day arrived swiftly, and I positioned myself among the crowds lining the Victory Parade route. The lead figure rode against the morning light, his silver armor gleaming as cheering voices filled the air. Ladies on second-story balconies threw silk handkerchiefs in tribute to the returning heroes. As Marcus drew nearer, I waved enthusiastically, only to discover a woman sharing his mount, her face flushed crimson with what I could only assume was pleasure. The woman was none other than our esteemed advisor Wood. "That must be our general," exclaimed one onlooker. "So magnificent." "Indeed, quite handsome," agreed another. "And that woman must be the legendary female advisor. What a perfect couple. I envy her fortune. If I could campaign alongside such a man." "Dream on," scoffed her companion. "They say the advisor's strategies prevented a devastating ambush. True talent deserves such rewards." I retreated deeper into the crowd, fearing recognition, though my caution proved unnecessary. Marcus passed without noticing me entirely. "Miss," Lily whispered venomously, "I always said General Marcus and that Wood woman were lovers. Remember how he wanted to break your engagement when His Majesty announced it? Now they embrace publicly. Shameless." I nodded grimly. "Absolutely shameless. And to think he claimed she was like a sister to him." With the main attraction departed, we prepared to leave, only for me to collide with someone's chest. "Ow!" I rubbed my aching head. The person felt solid as stone. Looking up to voice my complaint, I recognized a familiar face. Lily began stuttering helplessly beside me. You're... The Grand Eunuch quickly covered her mouth, explaining smoothly, "Indeed, this is young Master Huang." I smiled nervously. "Young Master Huang, please excuse us. We must return home." His Majesty seemed deaf to my words, reaching toward me with obvious intent. Fearing another improper encounter, I seized Lily's hand and fled. As we ran, I glanced back to see the Emperor's twitching expression. "General Marcus arrives!" came the announcement at last. Finally, here was Marcus. He paused when passing me, clearly struck by something. My afternoon spent in elaborate preparation had not been wasted. He was experiencing regret, though such feelings came far too late. I was no longer merely Chancellor Richard's daughter. I had become someone entirely new. I clutched the satchel in my robes, craning my neck expectantly toward the entrance, wondering what drama would unfold. Marcus entered in fresh black robes, noticeably thinner than before. "This humble general greets your Majesty." The Emperor gestured magnanimously from his throne. "Rise quickly, General Marcus, you are our dynasty's hero, conquering 2 northwestern cities for our realm." Marcus bowed respectfully. "This servant dares not claim credit. All success flows from your Majesty's wisdom. It is this general's fortune and the people's blessing." His Majesty laughed heartily. "What reward would you desire? Name anything, we shall grant it." The Emperor's smile suggested hidden calculations. Marcus knelt in the hall's center with sudden determination. "Your Majesty, this subject has found love, a woman who captured his heart at first sight. I beseech you to rescind my engagement to Chancellor Richard's daughter." Every gaze fixed upon father and me, while Marcus kept his head bowed. Unexpected melancholy filled my heart as I resolved to sell every trinket he had sent me at the earliest opportunity. Even moments before his arrival, I had contemplated mutual respect within our marriage, despite its loveless foundation. There I sat, wearing that ugly wooden hairpin, having endured the crown princess's mockery just before Marcus entered. She had called me a country bumpkin for adorning myself with tree branches. Now those same antagonists, led by the princess, watched my supposed humiliation with obvious glee. Outwardly calm, inwardly serene, I silently anticipated the coming spectacle. His Majesty drew out his response with deliberate slowness. "This presents difficulties. Chancellor Richard, what are your thoughts?" Father's expression grew grave. Your Majesty, your word is sacred. A gentleman's promise cannot be withdrawn lightly. For General Marcus to immediately request annulment seems inappropriate. The Emperor frowned thoughtfully, as if weighing complex factors. I fixed my attention on Marcus expectantly, waiting for the show to begin, though he refused to meet my gaze. Without hesitation, I rose from my seat. Your Majesty, this subject agrees to the annulment, but requests permission to question General Marcus first. Presumptuous. Return to your place immediately. Your Majesty, this servant has failed in his daughter's education. Father shot me a warning look. His Majesty interrupted Father's apology. We grant permission. I faced Marcus directly, speaking with careful precision. General, is your beloved Arabella Wood? He confirmed this. I feigned heartbreak and devastation. But General, didn't you say she was merely like a sister to you? He explained that Arabella had saved his life at great personal cost and that honor demanded he marry her, promising lifelong devotion. I pressed my lips together before asking, must every life-saving deed be repaid through marriage? By such logic, I once rescued a young boy in childhood. Should I demand he marry me? What of your claims of fraternal affection? I see now that you two were never proper. If annulment must come, then I shall be the one to dismiss you. His only response was a whispered apology. Finding this absurd, I yanked the wooden hairpin from my head and hurled it at his feet before addressing the Emperor. This subject, Elizabeth Richard, requests annulment of her engagement to General Marcus. May your Majesty grant this petition. His Majesty examined the discarded hairpin with obvious distaste. General Marcus has rendered great service and deserves substantial rewards. Since this first engagement displeased both parties, we refuse to create an unhappy union by force. Therefore, we issue 2 new decrees. First, granting marriage between General Marcus and Miss Wood, with the wedding date determined by our astronomers. Are you satisfied, General? Marcus kowtowed deeply. Eternal gratitude, Your Majesty. We found Miss Richard's words most insightful. Indeed, life-saving kindness merits physical repayment. Having recently confirmed that our own savior is none other than Miss Richard herself, beyond previous rewards, our second decree appoints Miss Richard as imperial consort. Hearing this second proclamation, I fainted dead away in the center of the hall. Don't worry. I merely suffered from low blood pressure. Though my final conscious thought wondered when exactly I had become His Majesty's savior. Later witnesses told me that upon my collapse, the Emperor proclaimed I had swooned from pure joy, while Father and his political enemies nearly cracked their skulls from excessive kowtowing in futile attempts to change the imperial decision. What does one experience when awakening to find oneself an imperial consort? Before I could properly savor my liberation from Marcus, I found myself mourning my own fate instead. I suspected this mad emperor had elevated me to spite my knowledge of Consort Dayu's affair with his brother. This whole savior business was clearly fabricated, except for rescuing that paint-daubing boy from the fire years ago. When had I ever saved anyone? Wait. Could that sniveling brat who fought with me in Father's study actually have been the Emperor? Father sat beside my bed, eyes brimming with tears. Father, I called weakly, feeling quite hungry. My poor daughter, he wailed. Wah! Father, I'm still here, I reminded him gently. Father glared at me with red-rimmed eyes. Mother dabbed her tears with a handkerchief nearby. The palace devours people without leaving bones. How will you survive there with your innocent nature? I remained speechless. Did my parents truly consider me so naive and helpless? Father rolled up his sleeves with renewed determination. Impossible! Even if it costs my life, I'll petition His Majesty to rescind this decree. Observing the bruise on his forehead, I fell silent. These past years had not been kind to father in court, with Minister Harrison and others constantly undermining him. Look how the old gentleman had aged. Half his hair had turned white. I grasped his sleeve as my stomach rumbled audibly. Father, being a consort isn't necessarily terrible. At least I'll eat well and live comfortably. Let's discuss this after you bring me some braised pork to sample. I feigned illness at home for several more days, but as my palace entry date approached, my heart grew increasingly peaceful. Mother, concerned for my well-being, urged me to enjoy final freedoms before confinement within palace walls. Her suggestion had merit, so I brought Lily to the Eastern marketplace. While examining an attractive jade bracelet and haggling with the vendor, familiar voices interrupted nearby. Marcus, this bracelet is lovely. I want it. Shopkeeper, what's your price? The merchant beamed. Is this the lady wife? Excellent taste indeed. This bracelet. I cut him off sharply, still holding the bracelet Arabella coveted. Sir, I was examining this first. Business should follow proper order, shouldn't it? Arabella reluctantly released the jewelry, turning to Marcus with disappointment. Since Miss Richard fancies it, I'll defer to her preference. Marcus looked up to discover my presence, coughing awkwardly. Miss Richard, you lack nothing. Why compete with Belle for trinkets? A nearby matron chimed in. Isn't that General Marcus and Advisor Wood? Our heroes. Then, regarding me with disdain, stealing from our brave advisor, shameless behavior indeed. Her loud voice attracted support from other shoppers, all now viewing me with contempt. Lily defended me valiantly. Nonsense! My mistress saw it first. How is that stealing? The merchant, sensing opportunity in mob sentiment, added his voice. Young lady, why quarrel with our heroic advisor? I have other bracelets. I'll give you one freely. Listening to the whispered accusations, I realized public sentiment favored the victorious general and his companion over me. Prolonging this scene would only damage my reputation further. I smiled coldly. General Marcus, your popularity now exceeds even His Majesty's. Most impressive. Since Advisor Wood desires this bracelet, despite my prior claim, I won't fight for it. Farewell. I dragged my cursing maid away, having lost all interest in shopping after this unfortunate encounter. We headed to my usual restaurant, the Prosperity Pavilion, for comfort food. Upon entering, I discovered Marcus and Arabella already dining there. Marcus tenderly wiped sauce from her lips while I made disgusted sounds. Miss, shall we try elsewhere? Lily suggested nervously. I shook my head firmly. Why should I be the one to retreat? Marcus noticed me and tensed visibly, his gentle ministrations becoming distracted. I chose a corner table, pointedly ignoring their presence. After a while, Arabella whispered something to Marcus, who rose and departed, glancing back at me before leaving. I continued my meal peacefully, assuming our interaction had ended, until Arabella approached my table. Miss Richard, it's been some time. I didn't bother looking up. I'm sorry, who are you? Arabella laughed lightly, though the sound seemed to pain her, triggering a coughing fit. Miss Richard forgets so easily. Allow me to reintroduce myself. I'm Arabella Wood. I continued eating, determined to ignore her. Undeterred, she launched into monologue. Miss Richard's anger toward me is understandable. I cannot compare to you, raised in village poverty with a father who favored sons, frequently beaten for my worthless brother's sake. When famine struck, father sold me as concubine to a 70-year-old man for grain. I was only 10 and refused such degradation, poisoning the old man instead before fleeing to the village burial grounds. Prepared for suicide, I encountered Marcus instead. He appeared like a divine being, rescuing me and teaching me literacy. Through countless nights of studying military texts by candlelight, I strove to stand beside him as an equal. I thought I would finally marry him until you appeared. Miss Richard, you possess everything. Any excellent man could be yours. Why must you cling to Marcus?" I stared at her with utter revulsion. Was this woman mentally deficient? How had she become a military advisor through connections? Which eye saw me clinging to Marcus? Arabella sneered. "Marcus and I rarely venture out together, yet everywhere we go we encounter you. Such remarkable coincidence, wouldn't you agree?" I rolled my eyes. "Look in a mirror before making such accusations. Not everyone shares your pathetic obsession with Marcus. How presumptuous can you be?" Arabella's disbelief was palpable. I saw no point arguing with someone whose brain had clearly short-circuited from romantic delusion. Lily, thoroughly disgusted, pushed Arabella aside with minimal force, yet the woman collapsed dramatically, clutching her chest as crimson stained her garments. "Miss Richard, Marcus truly considers me only a sister. Please don't be angry. If striking me again would ease your mind, I would gladly suffer it." Marcus burst through the entrance, abandoning his purchased sweets to rush toward us. "Belle, what happened?" He slapped Lily viciously before turning on me with venom. "Elizabeth, I never imagined such cruelty from you. Belle spoke on your behalf during her recovery, urging me not to break our engagement. I felt guilty toward you, yet you assault her so brutally. Disgusting." Seeing Lily's bleeding mouth ignited my fury. I struck Marcus across the face. "What gives you the right to hit my servant?" While he stood stunned, I dragged Arabella from his embrace and slapped her hard. "And what gives you the right to scheme against me?" That day's violence generated predictable rumors throughout the capital. They said Chancellor Richard's daughter, obsessed with General Marcus, had grown jealous of his pure love for Advisor Wood. Drunk on her future power as imperial consort, she had violently attacked 2 war heroes. Public opinion praised the romance between Belle and Marcus, a tale of beauty rescuing the hero, perfectly matched lovers, destined union. These rumors brought father considerable political trouble through his opponent's accusations. Cold calculation filled my heart. Some people interpreted restraint as weakness, growing bolder when you ignored their provocations. On my palace entry day, His Majesty defied public criticism by granting me tremendous honor. He sent an elaborate 10-mile bridal procession and came personally to escort me, with guards forming impenetrable protection that kept gawking crowds at bay. Most outrageously, he commanded Marcus to provide additional security, claiming enhanced safety as justification. My anticipated assassination attempts and dramatic rescues never materialized. Instead, common people branded me a demon consort who, failing to seduce Marcus, had bewitched the emperor instead. His Majesty watched my formal attire with fox-like satisfaction. Under public scrutiny, I slowly removed the veil I had worn for years. The noisy crowd fell silent before gasps of amazement rippled through the assembly. Even nearby palace eunuchs stood transfixed. Someone whispered, "Truly a demon consort." His Majesty's sharp glance silenced the speaker, who promptly disappeared into the crowd. The Emperor displayed obvious pride, pushing aside a young eunuch to embrace my waist, while seemingly addressing Marcus specifically. "Come now, pay your respects to the imperial consort." A sea of people dropped to their knees, their voices echoing, "Long live His Majesty! Long live the imperial consort!" After sufficient pageantry, I entered the imperial sedan while His Majesty gripped my hands tightly, gazing into my eyes with earnest sincerity. "Fear nothing. We shall silence all malicious gossip on your behalf." I lowered my head bashfully while thinking cynically that men's promises, especially royal ones, required careful interpretation. His Majesty continued speaking, though I absorbed little of his speech. Turning to admire the scenery and escape awkwardness, I spotted Marcus riding alongside our sedan, his expression dazed and confused. When he noticed my attention, our eyes met. Though he saw only my grimace of motion sickness rather than recognition, I was thinking, This swaying is unbearable. I'm getting so dizzy from this terrible rocking motion. His Majesty, misinterpreting my distress as homesickness, patted my back soothingly. Unable to endure another moment, I seized the chamber pot provided in the sedan. The retching sound that followed prompted His Majesty's excited exclamation, "Impossible! So quickly? We're going to be a father!" I seriously wanted to kick him into next week. That very night, His Majesty held me close while grinning wickedly. "Try running from us now. Where can you go?" I blinked in confusion, not understanding his reference. Seeing my blank expression, he pouted with disappointment. "How boring!" I clapped my hands together eagerly. "Come here, Your Majesty. Let me teach you something truly entertaining." His Majesty rubbed his hands together like an excited fly, his anticipation palpable. The next morning, Consort D led her sister consorts to pay formal respects to me. Rising early with an aching body and fighting exhaustion, I barely registered their barbed comments before dozing off mid-conversation. His Majesty discovered this scene after court and personally carried me back to bed before the assembled ladies. Subsequently, he selected my tablet every single night until the thing nearly wore through from overuse. Initially, palace rumors insisted I was indeed a demon consort, but through unknown imperial interventions, the story transformed. Now people claimed I was His Majesty's savior, echoing the tale of Marcus and Arabella, rescue repaid through marriage. Both Consort Du and Consort Su united the harem sisters against me, but I transformed their expected victim into their nemesis. If they wanted to purify this toxic environment, I would give them exactly what they needed. "2 circles, pong!" Consort Su made her claiming gesture. "Oh my, haha, sorry everyone, I win with 2 circles." Before Su could claim her tiles, I had already won the hand. Consort deputed playfully. "Annoying! How do you keep winning?" Within 3 days, a single mahjong set had converted our enmity into friendship. Even His Majesty found himself neglected as we prioritized our gaming. After all, wasn't playing cards far more enjoyable than court intrigue? During one intense session, His Majesty appeared unexpectedly. Both Su and Dee brightened at his arrival, especially Su, whose gaze could have drawn silk threads. "Your Majesty, this consort has prepared fresh snow pear soup in my chambers. Would you care to sample it?" "Your Majesty, I've made red bean and barley soup. Please visit tonight to try it." Inspired by their theatrical seduction, I joined the performance. Pinching my voice into false sweetness, I cooed, "Your Majesty, this consort has stewed herself into soup. Won't you come taste it?" His Majesty burst into laughter. "Excellent! We must thoroughly sample this consort soup." During this palace period, any banquet or ceremony inevitably featured Marcus lurking nearby. He constantly appeared with Arabella, flaunting their romance before me in displays that made my skin crawl. Watching their nauseating performance, I saw them as autumn grasshoppers, doomed creatures unaware of approaching winter. I had uncovered something crucial. Arabella was Prince William's illegitimate daughter, and Marcus knew this truth yet helped conceal it. Moreover, Prince William seemed to be plotting significant schemes, with Arabella frequently visiting Princess William. These activities had attracted not only imperial attention, but even reached my secluded harem quarters. Summer's oppressive heat arrived swiftly. Then came shocking news. Prince William had died suddenly, reportedly from excessive debauchery, expiring upon some woman's belly. I marveled at royal family eccentricities. His Majesty thoughtfully provided extra ice for my cooling comfort and arranged for rare fruits to be delivered. I savored fresh plums while reading popular novels, feeling wonderfully content. Suddenly, urgent cries arose outside my palace. "Imperial consort! Imperial consort!" I inquired about this commotion, and Lily reported it was Consort D's personal maid. I permitted her entry. The girl threw herself down, kowtowing frantically. "Imperial consort! Please save my mistress!" When I asked for details, she spoke evasively, claiming His Majesty had grown angry with Consort D and presented her with white silk for suicide. Hearing this, I considered recent intelligence Father had gathered for me, my eyes narrowing thoughtfully. At D's chamber entrance, I heard wild laughter from within. "Your Majesty, all these years my life here has been no different from the cold palace. You visited me repeatedly only under pressure from my father. Prince William was the one who truly loved and cherished me, who made me feel a moment's warmth. Now that he's gone, I have no reason to continue living." After a pause, I entered to find De laughing maniacally. "Serving emperors is like living with tigers, Imperial Consort. Today's fate for me might well be tomorrow's destiny for you." I smiled knowingly. "You secretly bore a daughter upon entering the palace, naming her Seven, didn't you?" Dee's laughter ceased as she lunged toward me like a madwoman. "How do you know that?" I continued calmly. "Prince William died for plotting treason, didn't he? How deeply were you involved? You seek death now to protect someone. But whom?" Dee's panic was obvious. "I don't understand your accusations." Caring little for her denials, I turned to leave. Soon after, rustling sounds emerged from within. "Consort De has passed away," came the eunuch's announcement. Sudden coldness gripped me. If His Majesty's favor ever waned, what would become of me? I needed a child to secure my position. Following Dee's death, His Majesty publicly attributed her demise to sudden illness. After that storm, he rarely visited the harem, spending most time in his study managing state affairs. Today, however, he summoned me to attend a ministerial banquet. Midway through the event, stomach discomfort prompted me to seek fresh air. His Majesty instructed the Grand Eunuch to escort and care for me. By chance, we encountered Marcus, who appeared somewhat intoxicated and stood motionless upon seeing me. After the Grand Eunuch's sharp rebuke, Marcus finally performed proper obeisance, though his face looked gaunt and exhausted. Preferring to avoid prolonged interaction, I attempted to pass him by when he called out, "Wait, Imperial Consort, I marry next month." I paused. "Then this palace offers early congratulations, General Marcus. Is there anything else?" He produced the wooden hairpin from his robes, fingers caressing it gently. Might the Imperial Consort speak privately with this humble general? I had no interest in listening and no desire to hear his words, yet the intelligence I'd gathered left me incredulous. Fixing Marcus with a steady gaze, I said, "General Marcus, 3 generations of your family died serving this nation, heroes all. I hope such honor won't be destroyed by your hand." Marcus showed momentary panic. "This subject trembles with fear. I don't understand the Imperial Consort's meaning. I came today with urgent matters to report." I flicked my sleeve dismissively. "The harem must not interfere in politics. As an outside male, you cannot freely enter palace grounds. Any urgent business should be presented directly to His Majesty." Marcus laughed coldly. "Just as Bell predicted, you're vain and hypocritical beyond measure." "What on earth?" With that, he yanked the protective amulet from his neck and threw it at my feet. I found his behavior utterly deranged and kicked the charm into a nearby pond. My words today weren't born of sympathy for Marcus, but memory of old General Marcus, beheaded by enemies and displayed for 3 days. That elderly man had once held me as a child and argued passionately with Father in his study, declaring he would die on the battlefield serving his country rather than in comfortable old age. Returning to find His Majesty already intoxicated, I prepared sobering soup and fed it to him personally. He drank every drop before inhaling my scent greedily, staring at me without speaking. "What troubles you, Your Majesty?" I asked. His Majesty inquired cautiously, "If we ever place you in dangerous circumstances alone, will you hate us?" I paused. "Would Your Majesty bear to do such a thing?" Instead of answering, he pressed close to silence me with kisses, murmuring, Elizabeth, give us a child. Spring's passion bloomed between us. Marcus's wedding day became the moment of palace rebellion. I never expected that Marcus would ultimately launch his coup because of Arabella's desire to avenge her parents. Chaos erupted throughout the harem as word spread that enemy forces had breached the palace walls. His Majesty was nowhere to be found, and I heard rebel soldiers searching for him. Preparing to flee, I was startled when my chamber doors burst open. There stood the Emperor in blood-stained armor, breathing heavily. "Elizabeth, I've come for you." Surprise filled me. That night, when His Majesty had questioned me, I had known he couldn't possibly take me with him. Yet here he was, returned against all logic. He grasped my hand and carved a bloody path forward. Throughout our escape, we fought through numerous checkpoints as his guards fell one by one around us. Finally, only we two remained when I spotted Marcus in the distance, mounted and wearing wedding robes. Behind him stretched a vast army that surrounded us completely. Marcus stared directly at us while beside him, Arabella wore rich brocades, her face twisted with hatred upon seeing the Emperor. "Mad dog Emperor, finally found you. If not for you, how could my mother have abandoned me? I should have been a princess, yet because of you, I suffered countless hardships. The debt of killing my parents cannot share the same sky with you. Today I'll have you torn into pieces." I laughed coldly from the side. "Arabella, stop your ridiculous lies. Your mother consort could have married Prince William originally, but she refused to accompany him to those harsh frontier lands, unable to bear leaving palace luxury behind. She abandoned you herself. What does any of this have to do with His Majesty?" His Majesty also sneered, "Merely a bastard child. That we allowed you to live until now shows our mercy." Prince William appeared dissolute on the surface while harboring deep ambitions, having long conspired with foreign tribes. How else could you predict enemy ambushes during your campaigns? Do you think we truly knew nothing? Arabella seemed to suffer some mental break, screaming for Marcus to kill the Emperor. Marcus dismounted, drawing his sword and approaching His Majesty. As he pointed his blade at the Emperor's throat, I pulled His Majesty behind me protectively. Marcus regarded me coldly. "Stand aside or I'll kill you along with him." His sword thrust toward us, leaving no room for escape as we prepared to face death together. I scolded the Emperor. "Why did you return for me? If you hadn't come back, they couldn't have captured you. How did things reach this point?" His Majesty smiled gently. "Elizabeth, I have no regrets. Given another chance, I would choose the same path." Tears blurred my vision. Just as I thought we were doomed, arrows whistled through the air. Marcus's sword shattered. Father led troops that surrounded Marcus's forces completely. Father roared furiously, "Marcus, you beast! 3 generations of your family served loyally, dying for the nation, leaving only you. Old General Marcus spent his lifetime on battlefields. That final campaign cost him his life when traitors in the ranks led to his capture and 3-day public execution. His Majesty personally led troops to recover the general's remains. Yet you would destroy your family's honor for this bastard girl. When you meet old General Marcus in the afterlife, he'll beat you to death for such unfilial behavior." Marcus's eyes reddened as he shouted, "Impossible! There were no traitors in our ranks. Prince William told me clearly that the Emperor feared our growing power and sent my father to die through treacherous schemes." His Majesty laughed scornfully. "Marcus, did warfare addle your brain completely? When foreign tribes invaded and people suffered, old General Marcus pleaded late into the night for permission to investigate why our forces kept losing battles. The traitor connected to foreign enemies was Prince William himself, along with his planted spies in your ranks. However foolish we might be, we would never gamble with our empire's survival. The Son of Heaven guards the frontier. The Emperor dies for his nation. This has been our dynasty's creed for generations, let alone murdering loyal servants." Father and several veteran ministers provided corroborating testimony. Arabella panicked. "Marcus, they're all lying to you. Don't believe them. Have you forgotten how your father died?" Arabella continued her frantic protests, but Marcus's expression showed he was wavering, his sword hand trembling. I stared coldly at the red-eyed Marcus. "Even if you had doubts, couldn't you investigate for yourself? You always rely on others' words, lacking any ability to distinguish truth from falsehood. How can you serve as this dynasty's general? I'm embarrassed for you and sorry for all the people under heaven." With a crash, Marcus collapsed, head in hands. Arabella still fought desperately. "Marcus, you useless fool! Guards, kill them! Kill the emperor and this wretched woman! Great rewards await!" The tide had turned. Rebel soldiers dared not move. Father quickly secured Marcus in chains. Watching Arabella's continued ranting about her superior birthright, I saw she had descended into complete madness. Following that rebellion, Marcus survived through consideration for his family's loyal service, though stripped of rank and reduced to commoner status. Arabella faced execution by imperial decree. Various ministers who had participated in the revolt suffered property confiscation, job termination, execution, and family extermination extending to 9 generations. Another ordinary day arrived when His Majesty rushed to my chambers after court, seeking comfort like a wronged child. He complained that court historians bullied him, constantly restricting his actions and criticizing his failure to distribute imperial favor equally among consorts. Indeed, aside from myself, the harem functioned as mere decoration, creating widespread dissatisfaction. Palace rumors claimed His Majesty treasured me like a precious jewel, positioning me as future empress. One day during court session, His Majesty announced his intention to make me empress. Minister Harrison immediately led opposition, arguing that I was jealous by nature, monopolizing imperial attention while forbidding visits to other consorts. If I became empress, he would dash his head against the palace pillars in protest. His Majesty replied dismissively that Harrison needn't wait. He could bash his head right now. Harrison promptly fainted. His Majesty further declared the end of all future consort selections, suggesting critics arrange their own if they wished. This proclamation shocked court and countryside alike. Even Father wrote expressing concern that I might have given His Majesty some sort of love potion. I rubbed my temples while feeling waves of nausea. Lily watched me worriedly before summoning the imperial physician. Soon, news of my pregnancy spread throughout the capital, prompting His Majesty to embrace me while shouting like a fool. "We're going to be a father! We're going to be a father!" I shared his joy, knowing this child would provide the security I needed. My pregnancy symptoms proved intense, yet His Majesty continued spending every night in my chambers, caring for me tenderly. He even discussed our future. A son would become crown prince, while a daughter would receive princess rank. When I knelt in gratitude for such honors, his displeasure was evident. He forbade me from ever kneeling again. On mid-autumn festival evening, despite my advanced pregnancy, I sat contentedly eating mooncakes when His Majesty mysteriously announced he wanted to show me something special. He brought me to the highest point in the imperial palace. From here, we could see the entire palace complex spread below us. Every household had lit lanterns, and the night sky bloomed with floating lights that connected into rivers of stars. His Majesty's eyes reflected the gentle candlelight as he held me close without speaking. Studying his profile, I noticed his first gray hair. Perhaps moved by the atmosphere, I spontaneously took his hand for the first time. Whatever the future might hold, in this moment, I was willing to stand beside him surveying this prosperous realm.